you're going to do a hard lockdown and everyone obeys it,
yeah,
you're going to stop a virus spread, and that's a fact. But here's the thing: the longer it went on, the more disobedience there was. And I mean, one of the things, I'm here in this area, Clydebank, and I was speaking to a local taxi operator, someone that runs taxis, and he said to me, Michael, we see during lockdown, the last one, the winter one there, the one just there, said, we have never been busier between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, Thursday to Sunday. And it's kids going party to party, house party to house party. And I was talking to one of my staff the other day, and I said, I'm disappointed in your generation. I said, we kind of jokingly, I said, we'd have been doing illegal raves if this happened back to us back in the 90s. Raves everywhere. And he turned around to me and he went, he's a musician. He went, well, where you just don't know about them. You're too old.
Well, I like younger generation. When I was younger, I got my teeth knocked out in rugby, got these two knocked out.
Right.
And I wouldn't miss a night out. I went out without front teeth. And that was just one Saturday. I wouldn't stop in one Saturday. And that was out. And that was like trying not to smile, like, oh, hey guys, like that. And I can't imagine having 8 months taken out of your life, a year, when you're like that 18 to 24 stage, when you're going out all the time. And imagine being a single lad, living with your mum and dad at that age, like Saturday night, what we're doing. Oh, there's a celebrity cheers on. You think, fucking hell, what a Saturday this is. Do you know what I mean? And but I honestly think 2 years ago, I didn't even know what epidemiology meant. So I was
I probably still don't. And that's the funny thing. That's the one you always get thrown at you, isn't it? You're not an epidemiologist, and you go, I know, but most of these, neither Dr. Hillary or blooming Davy Shredder or Professor Jason Leach or Nicola Sturgeon or Boris Johnson. You know, it's like none of them are. You know,
well, that Dr. Hillary, he's on telly every day and he just lies. Like yesterday,
am I allowed to swear this, by the way?
He's what?
If I swear, is it a problem?
That's not a problem at all.
I mean, what was he said? 90% of people in hospital are unvaccinated. It's just, and it's nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense.
I think they used a graph from about 7 months ago or something like that, didn't they? And use about 90 people thinking like, it's a good thing on Twitter and stuff now. You've got these really intelligent people that are just on it all the time, aren't they? So that like, it's not me that finds out that he was wrong. Is you've got these people like, oh, if you look at the stats and they put all these graphs on it, it's very hard now for them to come out with the lies. And I think more and more people are starting to think, I don't know if this is just completely about the virus or whatever it is. There's something like a weird agenda they're trying to push across, isn't there?
Well, you know, that was the reason I started talking about this was, and it was way back last July. Now, if you remember, last July, things were opening up.
Yeah.
And the Scottish government put in a background music ban. Now, they banned. Now, it doesn't matter if you were walking in a pub, a restaurant, or a bar, or a style bar, or a cafe, or a Starbucks. You weren't allowed to have background music because you said, you know, that makes you talk louder and it spreads the virus and nonsense. So I got annoyed about this. And I posted something online about it. I said, do you not think this is going too far? The abuse I got, like 60% of people were saying, just trying to save lives. You're lucky you're open at all. And I really, and that's why I ended up having to make a video, because I went on my video and said, look, I'm just asking a question. I work in a bar and I know that when you put music down, because I know this, when you put music down at the end of the night to get everyone out of a bar, they'll start talking louder. And we know this as operators. If you go into some Weatherspoons without music, the noise of people speaking is quite intense if it's got a low roof and they like high roof buildings. We know this. And there's actual science behind it. So we were involved in an acousticologist report where we actually submitted science to the Scottish government, and they sat on it for 3 months before they allowed us to play background music. But that was the only time we've ever refused a regulation. We just kept doing it.
Well, it was like I was at because I do events and like entertainment and stuff. And when people started saying we need a lockdown, you're like, no one had even heard of a lockdown. Like they were saying it as if like, oh, it's the only option. You're like, 2 weeks ago, you had never heard of a lockdown. I do a lot of talks with the psychologist, And one of them was saying to me, we put ourselves in lockdown because they put the information out like, we either lock down or you're all going to die. What should we do? Well, we need to lock down. So there's sort of like them behavioural psychologists churn the information out, and then we put ourselves in lockdown. Oh, we need to lock down, we'll all die. And you're like, well, that isn't what's going to happen, is it?
See, when you look back now on what was getting reported then, and the pictures of the people in the hazmat suits picking up bodies from the street in China.
Yeah.
And there were headlines, like I remember one headline that said, Iran is building mass graves for the dead COVID people so big that you can see them from space.
Yeah, yeah.
There's all this, it's carnage. You know, we're about to see death on an unprecedented scale. And I can remember the guy, the kind of, you know, the kind of health director up here, Professor Jason Leach. He went on the telly and he said, if we don't lock down right now, within a month, 10 to 15% of the population will be hospitalized. So, you know, here we are 7 months on, and, you know, the headlines are 12 died yesterday, you know, within, you know, now I'm not saying that's, you know, it's tragic that anyone dies, but we were talking about millions of people dying imminently. And now we're going, all cases, I mean, there's a headline today, Omicron cases have increased tenfold in the past week. We've gone from 9 to 99.
Yeah,
now, is that Omicron detected? Or is that Omicron, you know, I mean, I just question everything now. If they say to you, you know, unvaccinated people are the ones dying, well, is that because they're so frail they can't get the vaccine? There's never that detail. I just don't know. And I'm not saying that's a fact, but it's something that makes me wonder, you know?
I think when you start looking at it with different eyes, you know, like you start thinking, well, that's weird, isn't it? That's weird. Sitting down in a bar, you can take your mask off, but standing up, and you're like, how does that make a difference? I seen a scientist describe that, you know, where you sit down in a bar, you'll have had it, as having a certain bit in a swimming pool where you're allowed to piss. And that's the same logic, isn't it? You know what I mean? That is the exact same logic of sitting in a bar, but you don't need your mask on.
Yeah, I heard that logic the other day about masks as well. Like, imagine you piss your pants and your pants are full of piss and you're walking about all day doing your shopping, putting your hands in your pockets, adjusting your pants and touching things all the time. You're going to get piss germs on everything, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And you take out your wallet and it's covered in piss, and you go to pay with your card that's covered in piss. Things are going to get piss on it, you know, and these masks. I mean, we see it. I see a funny thing in the restaurants. Sometimes people forget their mask on the way to the toilet. They walk to and from the toilet like this.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And you've seen it, people pulling up with t-shirts. You're like, what's going on? I mean, I'm not, you know, the comparison with anti-maskers, you know, you always get called an anti-masker, right? Here's my stance on masks. My staff all wear masks. If any of them come to me and say, I'm finding it difficult to breathe with this thing, I say, you're an exemption then. I'm not going to mess with how you feel health-wise. So you don't have to wear one, and they'll wear a lanyard or not. I've got a couple with asthma, but they'll wear them. If I walk into my work, I wear them because I don't want to seem arrogant.
Yeah, yeah.
But the problem I've got with masks, you always get, I mean, you listen to like James O'Brien or something like that, and he'll say, you know, on LBC, and he'll say something like, what's the problem putting on a mask? Just put it on. That's not my problem. My problem is not me putting on a mask on a train. My problem is this. When retail was allowed to open and hospitality was kept shut, we were told it's because mask wearing is not possible in hospitality while you're eating and drinking. So we were told that was the difference between being open and closed. So I want to see hard data. I want to see a really open debate on mask efficacy from scientists that really know, but we don't seem to get that.
Well, you got told by Dr. Hillary and all these other lunatics on the telly, don't wear a mask. The droplets will just go right through. They won't make a difference. You had the health minister for the UK, and that come out for weeks and months, didn't they? And then they went, use a mask. And you thought, oh, why? What happened? And you think, well, they never really come at you with any information. They just said, oh, just wear a mask. And you thought, well, why would it change?
The science has changed. Have you heard that one? The science has changed. Well, actually, when you look at it, we've now got a higher infection rate in Scotland than they do in England.
Yeah. Same as Ireland, same as Wales, and we're the only country that didn't have the mask.
England haven't, and then England put the masks on. Is that going to make a difference? Probably not.
Oh, well, not just that. It's how people like people say if you're getting surgery, they have a mask on. You think that's a sterile environment. Getting a one-use mask out your pocket for the 100th time, just putting it on as you walk in. I just don't think you can compare them. You know what I mean? It's some people will go in the garage and just do that. And no one bats an eyelid, but if he doesn't do that, it's like dangerous.
I actually had a post taken down on LinkedIn, and I was talking about all the mental things, the most ridiculous examples of safetyism, and it got taken down.
Yeah.
So I think my top 5, but amongst them where I'd booked a trip for my wife to Italy last year, and I didn't think I was going to get to go, but as it happened, when the trip came round, it was for her birthday. Italy was off the list. So we went to Italy for a couple of days and came back. So I got over there and I had the cloth mask on, one of these ones, a bit more comfortable. I've got a massive head, right? I'm 6'5", I've got a big head. And I was wearing it on the way there, no problems. And then on the way back, we're about to get on the plane and the guy goes, that mask's not good. You need to get a proper one from the shop. So I went to the shop and I got the only mask that was on sale there, which looked like a medical mask, and I put it on. It was one of these kind of coloured masks, but still looked like a medical one. And he goes, no, you can't get on the plane. Next thing I know, there's security on me saying you can't get on the plane with that mask. It needs to be a medical grade mask. So I went into my bag when I had like my magazine, my book and everything, and I managed to find this medical mask that I'd taken off because it had a hole in it. And I put it on, and they said, right, you can get on the plane now. Then the other one was I was working throughout lockdown, right? And I was on the train, and I was the only person on the train every day. So I get on the train one day, and there's a big guy at the other end. He's a ticket collector. So I'm on the train. I'm at the other end of the train. I've not put a mask on. I see this guy get up, put on a mask. Big heavy guy, and he walks up to me. He's got his mask on, and he goes. So as he walked towards me, I put my mask on, and he goes, "You keep on your mask." I said, "What did you say?" And he went, "You need to keep on your mask." And as he said it, he pulled it down. When you need to keep that mask on. I'm like, well, we're all just acting like lunatics. These people driving about in their cars with masks on by themselves.
It's like the train from Carlisle to Glasgow. If you're on that, because Scotland had a mask mandate, England didn't. So when you go over the border at Carlisle, there's an announcement on the train saying, "Please now put your masks on." Sat with the same people you've just been sat with all the way from London or wherever you've been for hours and hours, but now got to whack that mask on. And like you can see people like, yeah, no worries. And you thought, it's just insanity, this, isn't it? You just think, well, what's the point in this?
We went down to London a couple of weeks ago, and the wee guy, the Professor Jason Leach, who's like our version of Chris Whitty, but he's not. Chris Whitty is an epidemiologist. I think this guy's a dentist, right? But he's the kind of spokesperson for public health in Scotland. And I get on the train, and I've said stuff about him online and stuff. And I got on the train, and I look at my train number ticket, and he sat across from me. So I thought, I'm not going to sit. It was actually quiet, the train. So I was sat with my family, and we were dotted around the carriage anyway, that way you book tickets. I thought, we'll just sit over here and I'll leave him alone. But it was funny listening to the staff say to him, this is a guy that helps influence the policy, and they said, we're not allowed to drink on trains. Alcohol's banned from trains because of COVID in Scotland, but it's not in England. So this is a train down to London where you can buy cans of beer. And, the woman went up to him and said, so you've got to keep your mask on until you get to Carlisle. You can take your mask off when you get to Carlisle, and you can order alcohol when you get to Carlisle. And he's just going, okay. I thought, how stupid. And he's taking his mask off to drink his tea and his coffee and have his lunch. And then he's putting it back on again. And the same people are sitting in front of him doing the same. And the staff are taking their masks off when they get to Carlisle. And it was just, you think, are you not looking at this thinking, this is ridiculous? You're not sitting there going, God, I've created madness here. Is it not clicking? Is it not sinking in?
Well, that's the bit like, there's so many aspects of it where you just look and you think, I honestly thought the staff, am I going mental, or am I just seeing something different than, because that many people just on board with it, weren't they? Like, and if you mentioned anything, if you said like, fishing wasn't safe at the start, was it? And someone said, well, it's two people catch the same fish further down the bank and they cough on that fish, and you're like, are you really saying that that's an option? And people look at you like, why do you want grandmas to die? You're like, Why? Because two people caught the same cab. You're like, Jesus Christ. But that's the sort of madness. And like you said, people driving around in a car with a mask on their own, with a pair of gloves on. Like, how many times do you say that? I feel like knocking on the window saying, hey, you're just a hazard on society. Do you know what I mean? Like, how scared must you be? They must just sit there, watch BBC and that and think, Jesus, we're all going to die. And after 18 months, I always think, you must start thinking, it hasn't killed all the people I know. It hasn't killed all my family. It's been here 18 months. Everyone's had it. It's maybe not the Black Plague. Like, don't get us wrong, people do die of it. It's like flu. I don't think anyone realised people died of flu. I used to make the comparison, people like, stop making a comparison. It's nothing like flu. You're like, it killed about 28,000 people a couple of years ago. No one give a shit.
Yeah. I mean, I've got 100 staff, right? And probably more through the doors over the period. And this is what I'm always saying. I'm saying, look, we've worked. I mean, my full-timers will spend in a bar or restaurant, you would have to go to a bar or a restaurant 5 times a week, 6 days a week, 5 times a day to spend as much time in a bar or restaurant as one of my staff, right? Serving thousands of people. And they're all alive and the families are alive. We had, the biggest irony is we have one person that got ill from COVID, like quite bad, had to go on oxygen in the whole team. And that person was off for 2 weeks over Christmas because they decided they were going to isolate so they could see their family at Christmas. And they did that for 2 weeks, got together with their family and came down ill with it the next day, and their family were all fine. All the old people in this person's family were all absolutely fine. And this person ended up in hospital. Just weird stuff like that. But all my team are just, you know, they've done their tests, they've all had it now, they've all got their jabs, they're all fine with it. They're cracking on and they're not scared anymore. But I think we've come, we you know, it was this kind of journey I went on where we locked down for a few weeks, my venue. And I mean, I did it voluntarily. I did it before the lockdown was announced, the day before, because a few of us had COVID. A few of us had this thing. Right. And I had it and it laid me out for a couple of days. And then I lost my sense of smell for 2 weeks. And you know, I was in two minds whether to open back up again because I'm seeing, well, the staff feel unsafe. Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I going to look greedy? But we opened for takeaway. We were one of the first restaurants in Glasgow to do it. First bloody day, John, 700 people turned up. A crowd.
Yeah.
I was like that. I'm getting the jail. I'm going to be on GMTV, Piers Morgan going, who is this maniac, this irresponsible nutter? I'm going to be in the front page of the Sun. I'm going to crucify. I'm going to be public enemy #1. But we kept them queued outside, 2 meters distance between them and all the rest of it. And, you know, you were saying to people, it's going to be 3 hours before you get your food. And they were going, yeah, fine. I've got nowhere to go. That's fine. And then after that, we did an online ordering. But the point I'm making is we've been through this phase of trying to get all our staff back. And they've been scared. They've been reluctant. They've been worried. And now they're just like, you know, I think we are further down the line mentally. And that's what I think people forget, that the ones that are scared, we were like them one time. At one point, we were all like that. And something's happened. We've seen something that we can't unsee. And it all just looks ridiculous, you know?
Well, it's just like as anyone under 60 or anything, like they keep saying lockdown unvaccinated. Why don't you lock down over 60s? You'll drop that death rate by 99.999%. You know what I mean? Like if we're bothered, but I just don't think we are that bothered like that. I think we've lost 5,000 beds from last year. So we've lost 5,000 NHS beds from last year. We've got 5,000 people in hospital this year at the moment with COVID, and half of them aren't in there with COVID. That's what people don't realise. You're classed as an inpatient. Just say I break my leg, go in, I'm getting it reset, and I fail a test on the way in. I am classed as an inpatient. And I think around about 50% of COVID, like people in hospital, are classed as that. And that's why you've got so many people at end of life who catch it before they die and they go down as a COVID. I've had relatives that definitely died as someone else, but they've gone down as COVID because of COVID in hospital sort of thing. Yeah,
we've had that as well. With people I know, that's been the case. But yeah, so it is, there's all that stuff. I try to stay away from all that stuff. I just try and stick to the fact that, but you can't help getting dragged into that question. Yeah. You know, you always get it thrown in your face. You know, sometimes you're saying, you know, you'll say something like the background music ban or the Scotch egg rule is ridiculous. And then people go, 140,000 people have died, mate. And you go, I know, but I'm not really I'm not talking about how many have died from flu in the past 5 years, you know.
No one has a
You know,
clue. That's what I mean. Like, how many
know,
people die a day? In England, it's roughly, in winter, it's about 1,600 people. So if there's 1,600
aye.
people, I always think it's disrespectful for the other. Like, they'll put 80 people died of COVID a day. Like, what about the other 1,520? Are we going to find out, oh, they died? And I think it would give people a little bit of understanding about the death rates. Because I still think people think COVID's the biggest killer on the planet. Like, if you talk to people, some people are like, do you mind? It's the biggest killer on the planet. Like, it's not even close. Do you know what I mean?
Not
Cancer
close.
and that are killing 500 a day. It's just weird.
Yeah. I mean, and then you always get that one, don't you? Cancer's not contagious, mate. You can't spread cancer. And you're like, no, I'm not talking about that, but you do have to appreciate the amount of money that we've spaffed on this. If we opened more cancer wards, better cancer screening services, then how many more lives would we have saved? You know, it becomes a bigger question about how much money we're spending on this. That's the big one for me, because, you know, the excuse for, you know, reducing the NHS has always been there's no magic money tree till this thing came along.
Oh, that's like track and trace. Does that make a difference? Like, can we just sack that? That's how many billion does that cost? 40 billion or something like that.
37 billion, and it's been dismantled. And it was not fit for purpose. I mean, we used to report everything to track and trace.
Yeah.
And it was literally, right, who served them? This person. Okay, where were they sat? They were sat there. Who else brought the food to them? This person. Okay, who were they working? They were working in this bubble. Tell them all to get tested, which was stuff we were doing anyway. But it got to the point where we were registering. I'll give you an example. We actually, there was a situation. I've got a bar called Thundercat Pub and Diner in Glasgow. And we had 5 members of the kitchen team test positive at one time. So we kind of looked at it, and it was like one tested positive, then another, then another, then another, all in the space of a few days. And we said, look, this is pretty grim. We don't know who else has got it. We don't know how many of the front of house staff have got it. We need to shut the restaurant. So we shut the restaurant, and then another 2 said they'd tested positive. So we said that went from a week to 10 days. We just said, right, let's get this out of the way. It was about 2 weeks we shut the place for. And we just did that and then got everyone back and reopened. But we have reported it to track and trace immediately. By the time we were reopened, track and trace got in touch. So we've been shut 2 weeks, and it was that, for whatever reason, their inefficiencies, the fact they were too bogged down. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that they got in touch with us and said, well, what did you do? And we said, well, we shut the restaurant. All right, that's fine. And, you know, that's what you're paying 37, you know, and 37 billion, I think, for the app and the whole service and the whole setup and the whole logistics of it. But it was crazy. And then we found out, so this is the Scottish government had basically introduced something where they said, if you have to isolate, you get a positive test, you get a £500 grant.
Right.
So we found out that most of those people that said they got tested were lying, and they were chasing the grant. So, you know,
you're gonna, aren't you? That's like, if just say you had one shift that week.
And we found out a bunch of these people are laughing. Now they're away, you know, so they've clearly done that. They've gone out and got other jobs where they got it. They got the 500 quid, and then they're off, you know. So it's one of those things, you know, that turned out to be a situation where a couple of people had actually tested positive, and then the rest thought, oh, got the opportunity to get a £500 grant here.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost like they're doing everything to get the numbers up. Nicola Sturgeon's on about cases again today, but her deputy, John Swinney, said, you must test yourself every time you leave the house now.
Yeah.
So you do the school run, test yourself. Walk the dogs, test yourself. Do the shopping, test yourself. Go to work, test yourself. Go and meet your friend, test yourself.
Why would you want it higher? That's what I always say. Since the start of it felt like they were like, oh, within 28 days. Like, have we ever done an illness where we test from, like, you go down as a death from 28 days? There's a guy in New Zealand, is it New Zealand, who got shot with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And he's gone down as a COVID death because he tested positive earlier in that month. And because he's gone down as a COVID death, I'm sure his lawyer or something like that is trying to plead the case. Well, it's attempted murder because he hasn't murdered him because he's died of COVID. And that's how mental you're going to get, aren't you, if you're going to start going down this route.
Well, that's it. We know that we get false positives as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got staff that have, and the lateral flow's a nightmare because you can forge it, you know, you can fake it.
Oh, kids did that in school, didn't they? If you put fizzy pop on it, it comes a positive.
See, in Scotland, you live in England or do you live in Scotland?
In Cumbria, just on the border, really.
You're in Cumbria, right? So we in Scotland, we had what was I talking about there? Just lost myself.
The lateral flows.
Yeah, so yeah, in Scotland, they came up with this idea that they were going to start opening up, but they were going to do it by council area. And they decided there were two councils. There was us, Glasgow, and another council area up north. Can't remember which one it was. But they kept everywhere shut in these two council areas. So we were Glasgow City. So it meant pubs were shut in Glasgow City. But because that's right on the border with Rutherglen, there was one point where you could go to that pub, but you couldn't go to the one across the road because it was in a different council area. And you had all this insanity going on, you know, this virus that's found its way from China, right? And has managed to get into Australia despite them cutting themselves off from the world. It's going to be all right if you shut the pubs in Rutherglen, but keep them open in Glasgow City Council. It was mental, right? And the other, I can't remember the other council area, it'll come back to me, that they kept shut. But it turned out that every single case, because cases were so high, it was all in one school. Hundreds of kids had worked out a way to set off these lateral flow tests, and they shut it. So, and it was actually a friend of mine had a hotel up there that went to the government and went, look, you've kept all the hotels shut because all the kids are skiving off school by submitting fake lateral flow tests.
Remember at school, I can remember at school putting your head against the radiator before your mum checked your temperature. You know what I mean? I'd have been all over this. I'd have probably discovered it. Do you know what I mean? There would have been kids like, how easy would that be thinking, oh, test this week. Oh, God, I've just got a dry cough, Mum. I don't know what it is. I'm just getting a temperature. Oh, God, he's got cut. You know what I mean? It'd be easy to do.
I mean, I know, you know, how many, think of all your mates, right? And I'll give you an example of those chefs I was talking about. Say you're 19 years old, you're earning 400 quid a week, and you're getting, if you fake this test, you think you're going to get a £500 grant. Your 400 quid a week will probably turn into a 300 quid furlough or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a bloody great time. You're going to go for that, aren't you?
Well, that was the problem.
Everyone's desperate for a chef, so you do a couple of cash in hand jobs.
Yeah.
In.
That was a problem at the start, wasn't it? People who were getting paid. Like, if it was me, if I still work for someone, I totally get it. It was summer. Oh, I think, hey, dangerous virus here. I think I need to spend a lot of time in the garden with Moretti sunbathing. Do you know what I mean? And I totally get that. But like, I don't think people had much empathy for people that were getting paid. Like, I'm in entertainment. You got nothing. You got a grant off the government, which was, you know what I mean? It wouldn't even pay the cans I was getting each week. So there was a lot of people in different boats. Like, everyone's in a different boat.
Over big time. You guys, the entertainers, the events organisers, self-employed, absolutely horrendous. And you know, it should have just been a case of, if you're in that position, you get a grant and this is what it is per head. Full stop. You know, let's make it equal. No one's working, everyone's getting money. Let's make it relevant to that. You know, that's the thing. And I know plenty of people in your position that were able to show their tax receipts, but still, you know, no to no avail. You just left hung out to dry. It's nonsense, you know. And I think the thing that really gets me is, I have a pal, and he did an initiative. He's got a cafe. His name's Arthur, and he did an initiative where he decided to feed people that needed it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we gave him a hand a few times. And I remember there was this woman, Julie. She lives in a high rise just down the road from me. And this is a woman. She had her husband was violent towards her. He was a drinker. So when lockdown happened, he was in the house all the time, beating her up, knocked her teeth out. She's terrified for the kids. She takes her two small kids, and then she gets put up in a high rise, an emergency, disgusting place. Issues with her benefits because of the whole thing where she's registered to, couldn't get no other family to get money from. and we were taking this woman food all day, and she's stuck up this high rise with 2 kids with nothing but a TV channeling and all this stuff about this killer virus, absolutely terrified. You think, put Nicola Sturgeon or Boris Johnson or Chris Whitty or whoever it is, put them in that position. And I know, people say, oh, you need to go to a COVID ward. But, I got a message from a nurse, an ICU nurse. And we actually did we called it a protest. It was a protest. We called it Eat Out to Reach Out. It was during the kind of one of the lockdowns. And she sent me a message just saying, look, we are now outnumbering COVID patients, are attempted suicides, attempted overdoses. You'll never hear about them. They're not measured statistically anywhere. People doing drug overdoses, elderly with lack of access to care, broken hips, falling over. And we did this protest, Eat Out to Reach Out. So obviously we weren't allowed to trade, but under all the rules, if you were giving out food to the needy, you could invite people into a building and feed them. So we filled the restaurant a couple of times, all socially distanced. We all did it right. The police turned up, tried to find out if we're doing anything. No money was changing hands. It got loads of publicity. But see some of the stories you got, man.
Yeah.
Grim, and it was typical stuff. You lose your job, someone in your family's cancer treatment gets stopped, like triple, quadruple whammies. You've got a child with autism that can't get any care. They're going absolutely mental in the house. It was just massive amounts of stuff going on. And all these politicians just completely oblivious to it. And that's what made me angry. And you never hear about any of that.
Well, you're meant to do an impact assessment. Governments, if they do an initiative or things like that, should be an impact assessment. So if this happens, this is going to be the dad. And we knew, like, the cancelled, is it 750,000 cancer treatments or appointments have been missed. All like mental health with kids and that is through the roof, suicide. But like you said, no one ever mentions that. They're sort of like, oh, well, we've got to do this. Well, you don't. Sweden didn't do it. There's loads of other countries. Look at Africa, like Pakistan and all these countries where they're all clubbed together. They've done better than us. So people still think these regulations helped in some weird, perverse way, whereas the truth say it doesn't.
I think that, if you're going to do a hard lockdown and everyone obeys it, you're going to stop a virus spread, and that's a fact. But here's the thing: the longer it went on, the more disobedience there was. And I mean, one of the things, I'm here in this area, Clydebank, and I was speaking to a local taxi operator, someone that runs taxis, and he said to me, Michael, we see during lockdown, the last one, the winter one there, the one just there, said, we have never been busier between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, Thursday to Sunday. And it's kids going party to party, house party to house party. And I was talking to one of my staff the other day, and I said, I'm disappointed in your generation. I said, we kind of jokingly, I said, we'd have been doing illegal raves if this happened to us back in the 90s. Raves everywhere. And he turned around to me and he went, he's a musician. He went, well, where you just don't know about them. You're too old.
Well, I like younger generation. When I was younger, I got my teeth knocked out in rugby, got these two knocked out.
Right.
And I wouldn't miss a night out. I went out without front teeth. And that was just one Saturday. I wouldn't stop in one Saturday. And that was out. And that was like trying not to smile, like, hello, hi guys, like that. And I can't imagine having 8 months taken out of your life, a year, when you're like that 18 to 24 stage, when you're going out all the time. And imagine being a single lad, living with your mum and dad at that age, like Saturday night, what we're doing. Oh, there's a celebrity chase on. You think, fucking hell, what a Saturday this is. Do you know what I mean? And I felt sorry for all them. And it's like holidays and things. It's coming up 2 years, isn't it? That it is a hassle to go on holiday. Now we went to Croatia and you've got to do the test before you go, test when you come back. Too. And it costs a little bit more money. And people that are on a budget think maybe Benidorm, 300 quid, put another 150, 200, they're not going, are they? Do you know what I mean? That's the difference. It's going to become a posh person's pursuit, I think. Yeah, if it carries on like it is.
Yeah. And I think that, whatever, going back to what I was saying, you can, if you do a hard lockdown, but see all these little restrictions they've put in place, I really do believe they've done nothing.
No.
And the further you go down the line, they're actually counterproductive, because you're just pushing people into illegal raves. The figures are out in the last lockdown. There were 14,000 gatherings, raves or house parties broken up by police Scotland. That's just Scotland.
Yeah.
That's the ones we know about. You know, you can guarantee they were going on. I know they were going on all the time. My son, who's 16, got involved and he just got bored. I wasn't going to stop him. He started organising a football tournament with other kind of areas, and it was getting broken up by meat wagons, like as if it was some kind of massive drugs bust or something. It was horrendous, you know, and it was in the front page of the papers. Kids playing football outdoors. And I mean, we had a thing up here where Rangers won the league for the first time in 10 years, and there were thousands of people came, you know, they had a big march, you know, peak lockdown. They said this is going to cause a spike. Never did.
No.
You know, so quite clearly people aren't catching this thing outside.
No,
you know?
No. Plus, if you've catched it once, like Chris Whitty and that, their original idea, which has been the original idea for every pandemic ever, apart from 2021, is to lock away the vulnerable or people that are going to get affected by it, and everyone else gets it, because I think there's only 1% of people on this planet that have got it twice. Do you know what I mean? So if I've had it once, that gives you some immunity in that, and just do it that way. It's like, if we didn't lock down, maybe after that first summer would have been more immunity going into that winter. It might have caused more deaths. Looking at it, like you look at Sweden now, they just keep dropping down the death toll because they've got that much immunity because they never shut down and things. Same with Africa and other countries. And it's just because there was only one science allowed. That was the way, because science doesn't mind being questioned, does it? But a lie hates being questioned. I think that was the problem, where you had like, it wasn't like some conspiracy guy on the internet. It was like epidemiologists from Oxford, Cambridge, telling you this is what you should do. And then you've got like your mate, Dr. Hillary, or Dr. Hilarious, that's what someone called him the other day, online saying, well, this is what we should do. And you just think, really? Because there's an epidemiologist from Oxford saying this is a terrible idea. But I think because the media and the government, and I think the government spent like £350 million on advertising their narrative. And it's very hard to go past that, because you seem like a bit of a nut, don't you? Like you'll have had it on LinkedIn. People message you like, do you want to kill grandmas? You're like, no, I just want to earn some money. I've not been out of work 17 months. And everyone else is working.
The encouraging thing there is, like I said to you earlier, I used to get so much abuse. It's literally like 2% now.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even say that. I mean, you see that if you read any of the comments, and you know, it's my page is open, and I just keep it on LinkedIn. I don't do it in anything else. I don't really partake in any other social media much, you know, but it's really flipped massively. So I think people really are fed up.
At the start, you were like a flat earther, weren't you? Felt like a flat earth guy at the start. You were like, oh, I don't believe this. Even like your friends and that were like, okay, is he having a bad do? And then like now, like you said, now it's all like, I have always thought that. No, you didn't at the start. I think you called me a nutter, or you know what I mean? Whereas everyone's, I think it's with the vaccines and that and the passports, because everyone knows a vaccine passport doesn't help. Look at Germany, look at France. If you've got the vaccine, you still pass it on. So that makes no sense. Here.
It's a scary thing. We have a very, very, very authoritarian government here in Scotland now.
You do, yeah.
I'm not going to get into the independence debate or any of that stuff, and I'm not bigging up Boris or anything like that, because that's the first thing they do. They go, you don't like this government, that means you're a Tory. You know, it's used as a slur. And you know, the government themselves do that, but they're very, very authoritarian. And for me personally, I'm obviously a bar owner. They're extremely anti-alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, Nicola Sturgeon's gone on record saying we've got a problem that in Scotland where we associate alcohol with having a good time and we associate it with having a shit time. And she used the word shit because she was getting interviewed by GQ and she was trying to be down with the kids. But she said that, and then you look at the people around her. Now, I don't, you know, I've got mixed religions in my family, and, you know, we're a big melting pot of everything, mixed race, mixed religion, mixed everything in my family. And so I don't have any issue, but nevertheless, these are the people shaping alcohol policy. So you get Nicola Sturgeon, who has openly said she hates alcohol, teetotaler. Yeah. You've got Kate Forbes as the finance minister. Her family were missionaries for the Free Church of Scotland that believes getting drunk is an immoral activity. Professor Jason Leach, the chap that I mentioned to you earlier, is a devout Baptist Christian that believes alcohol is immoral. And the other big health advisor to the Scottish government is Devi Schroeder, who's always on GMTV. She kind of talks an American accent. I think she's Indian heritage, and she's written papers that we need to wipe out alcohol the same way that we're trying to do it with tobacco. No advertising, handle it the same way, warnings in the bottles, let's drive it down worldwide. And they're very, very anti-alcohol. So for someone that's into Scottish independence, what does that say for the Scottish whisky industry? What does that say for the booming Scottish brewing and distilling industry? All these wonderful gins that we've got, these brilliant exports and great products and marketing and stuff that we can do. What does that mean if you want to wipe that out? We did minimum pricing alcohol policy in Scotland, and it's actually driven alcohol deaths are up. I don't know why. It's more to do with the socio-economic side.
That's
of things.
all it's about, isn't it? People become alcoholics for a reason, don't they? Like it's if you're out of work because of whatever and you're depressed, your wife's left you, that's when you pick up the bottle, isn't it? It's not because it's 10 pence more expensive now. You're like, oh, I'm not being an alcoholic anymore. Oh, I'm out, not paying 10 pence. I'm going to sort my life out. It's normally circumstance, isn't it, that people fall into these paths.
Listen, I remember most of my pals when I was younger would get into weed or drugs because it was a lot cheaper than, when ecstasy and stuff became really cheap. Yeah. That would be a lot of the guys I used to know ended up going down that road, and that's because it was much cheaper. They could take a pill, and it was cheaper than going out and having a few pints. And Scotland is the drugs death capital of Europe. Yeah, we've got more drugs death and possibly any other country in the world, and it's going up. We had a record year last year, and a lot of your drug deaths would have gone down to COVID. Yeah. So it's probably more than that. So we've got much bigger problems here than people opening nightclubs and bars. And the irony of it is, I was involved in nightclubs for years. I've got friends that are still involved in that scene, and they'll tell you the same. See, like even your generation, you're younger than me, but your generation, the rugby thing, the drinking and going out, that's all going. If you want to, I was talking to a guy that owns a student venue in Glasgow, and he said, it's a nightmare now. You get all the big rugby guys in, like you used to, but they're all coming into pool, but they're on the water because they've got a gym first thing in the morning. These rugby players are training 30 hours a week and stuff like that.
It's the Instagram world, isn't it? It's weird though, because before like Facebook and that come out, I'd say there was about 15 photos that existed of me. And then you started getting tagged in on photos on Facebook. Like people put a photo and you're like, I look like I'm having a stroke and I'm overweight. You're like, this needs to. So I totally get it from a younger generation. They're probably like having to look a little bit better than they normally do. But no, it is a bit more not pretentious. It's. I went to Ibiza on a stag do about 3 years ago, and it is that generation that's a little bit more. They care a little bit more. Like you say, when I was younger, you go rugby and that, and you'd have maybe one pair of shorts and older, or two pair of shorts, going out in dress pants and Ben Sherman dress shirt. Like now, that would be, you'd be a social pariah, wouldn't you, if you just didn't take that much care in your appearance and stuff. But the vaccine passport thing, it's just, I always bang on about it because I feel like that would just kill it stone dead. Do you know what I mean? I feel like that. I personally think it's towards China. I don't know if you've seen much about the point system in China. They have something where you've got to get in. I think we're just heading towards that. I think it's like in Italy, they call it a green pass, don't it? It's not a COVID pass, it's a green pass.
I mean, you remember that fiasco last year when they were trying to get, I can't be bothered going into the details, but it was to do with the Brexit legislation, and they were all getting kept late in the House of Commons until all hours, and it's because they couldn't decide in a vote. And you got to picture these cabinet ministers, Prime Minister Boris, this is a wet dream for them. See, being able to just sit there and dictate policy and only get drawn on one thing. They can get away with murder while everyone's myopically focused on this one issue. It's a little bit like what the SNP have done with independence, very blame culture thing. Blame down south, keep blaming them, keep talking about how bad they are. And, the key performance indicators for the SNP and the Scottish Government are not good reading, everything from health to education. It's not good, all the things that matter. I think that this vaccine passport coming in, the power that they could have with that.
That's the problem, isn't it? Like authoritarian power like that. It's like China. I seen an MMA guy. He beat up one of these Shaolin monks who thinks he's the hardest person on the planet. MMA guy just went in, floored him, flogged him. Now he can't buy a house, can't fly, because his points just gone right down because of like the disrespect. But you have that. It's like you on social media in China, your points will go down. Just say I put a post on like, I don't agree with this policy, my points will go down. And if you go down low enough, I can't use transport, can't buy a house, they'll take your money off you. And people, like I always say to people, like, it won't go. We're nothing like China. And you're like, we're not far off. You got told that you've got to swipe a medical card to go in a nightclub. You know what I mean? It's building blocks, isn't it, towards something really mental, I think.
Well, this is the thing. It's all, you know, now a lot of people, more and more, it's you pay things with your phone. You're going to have your vaccine passport with your phone, etc. It's all becoming integrated. And it is actually happening at the moment. So for instance, in Germany, with this mandate that's coming in, you can buy food without your vaccine passport, but you can't buy toys. So it's already becoming about what you can and can't buy. So, you know, if we think we've got environmental issues, limits on what fuel you can order, how many holidays you can go on, how much you drink, how, you know, and this is all potentially going to be controlled. Now, it's easy for them if they've already indoctrinated everyone into saying it's for the good of public health, you know, and say, well, John, you can't drink alcohol, you can't go more than 5 units of alcohol this week, John. You know, that's what's happening. Or if you go to the doctor and they identify a problem, you're not allowed to do X, Y, Z. You don't know, you know.
Well, I think it's tied in with global warming, because on social media, there's only two things I come up with: a little warning underneath saying, get your real information. And it's COVID and global warming. They're the only two that you like. I could put something on about like, who wants to be in my Nazi party? I'm just starting a Nazi party. Fine. You're all right with that, John. You could say, oh, who wants to start up whatever? You're fine. But anything to do with COVID, it's all sort of like COVID. And like my auntie put on saying, I was meant to be, it was something like, it's meant to be a nice weather today because it rained. And you come up, get your real weather information. For it's just my auntie saying she thought it was going to be a nice, you know what I mean? And I thought, them two are the only two. And like you say, if he goes to a COVID pass, then it goes to, you can only fly once every 2 years. You can only do so many miles.
Yeah.
Because people are like, well, I've had my vaccines. I don't care about COVID pass. Oh, but you've got to go to the gym 5 days a week. Oh, I didn't agree to that. Well, you give up your freedom to that first post, don't you? Because if it implements in, there's no going back, is it? It's not like China can't turn around and say, we don't want it anymore.
Yeah, it's just opening the door to saying, this is the government telling you what you can and can't do, based on what they think you should be doing. And, you know, my big thing is always, I mean, I mentioned to you earlier, I've had COVID. Now, the amount of times I've been in contact with someone that's tested positive, come down with COVID, and I have isolated a couple of times, but tested myself, negative, no symptoms. And, you know, this stuff about reinfection, it's just not happening. So why the hell should people like me be forced to go out and get one of these inject? I mean, I've got a family member in a hospice because she had blood clots.
Yeah, I know a couple of people like that. Yeah,
as a result of that's her now. She's debilitated. She can't speak, and she can't understand speech. And you know, if anyone in my family wanted to not get it on the basis of seeing what she's going through, they'd be well within their rights.
Yeah.
Just because of that. Now, I'm not going to tell anyone not to take a vaccine, but I don't think anyone should. It's like I did a post about it yesterday. If I'm telling you, you cannot come into my pub, and say I'm your local pub, and I'm telling you, you can't come in until you've had a jab, I am complicit in forcing you to get that jab. It's not my place. I'm a bar owner, you know? That's between you and your doctor. If you don't want to get it, it's up to you to go to your doctor. Your doctor can assess you, tell you whether you're at risk. That's the way it should be. That's the way it's always been. It's been that way for a reason. It's one of those things we've really got to watch ourselves in this one, because we're just going to open up something that's going to be well, look how difficult it is to get them to give their emergency powers back.
Oh, you're never getting them back. It's like after 9/11, wasn't it? They went, oh, we need to snoop on all your emails and stuff because we don't want this happening
That's
again.
it.
They've never come
That's
back,
it.
have they? We're out of
They've not
Afghanistan
gone
now.
back.
They've never come
We're
back.
talking about this today. Like that rule, not drinking in trains, that's going to be forever in Scotland now.
Yeah.
That's in. That's never moving. They're not giving. The Scottish government have actually said they want to keep these emergency powers forever.
Yeah.
That's what they've asked for. You know, they've got the situation in Australia, which is going. I've got family in Australia.
That is insane. Australia. I look at Australia, it looks like a futuristic film. They've got like, it's not a concentration camp, but there's people in army trucks taking you from your home against your will, putting you in somewhere that you're not allowed to leave. 3 people escaped the other day from that concentration camp. I don't know if you've seen the news clip. They escaped, they shut all the roads off. They don't even do that if someone escaped from jail. And it was 3 people that had failed a COVID test a week before, but they'd passed it since. They weren't unhealthy or not like that, and they escaped, and they're treating it like you'd have thought Ted Bundy escaped. Do you know what I mean? Like that was the levels of fee, and you're like, there's 3 people here that haven't got COVID have escaped. You're like, Jesus, is this?
But we've been through that. Remember, it's like when they keep you in this grip of fear, and they've managed to do that in Australia. They've just kept people in it.
Yeah.
And do you remember when they started saying the cases were appearing in the UK, and it was like they were trying to hunt down the super spreader?
Yeah.
The super spreader, we don't know who he is. Find out who he is. And it was like real psychological stuff, you know. If you're going to be a super spreader, if you get this thing, you're going to kill lots of people. I mean, madness, you know. Like, and I've got cousins over there.
Right.
So I mentioned you before. I've got lots of different religions in my family. You know, my mum was Catholic. I went to Protestant school, but my dad was Jewish, but then he became an atheist when he was about 15. My grandma was on the other side was Protestant. But I've got Jewish people in the family. I've got one aunt that went away and married a Jewish guy, right? And he was quite religious. And his parents actually fled Nazi Germany to move to London just before it all kicked off. And he grew up there. And my cousin, Naomi, his daughter, this guy that fled, my Uncle Fred, is now married to a guy whose parents met on Auschwitz, right? Like met in that camp. And so they're documentary filmmakers. They're very versed in this subject, and they're like, Michael, he said, the one thing the question you always got to ask, it's the case of the Auschwitz guard. You don't ask, why did that guard end up like that? It's, how could I end up like that?
Yeah.
And we're already starting to get this rhetoric, you know, if you look back on, and this is me based on a conversation I had with a Jewish person. So if anyone wants any mock outrage out there that I'm talking about, this is as bad as people getting gassed, I'm not in any way saying it's as much as those horrors. I'm talking about the state of mind, how this comes into play. And, you know, all this stuff, the propaganda against Jews in Nazi Germany started by saying that they were spreaders of lice. And you can look it up online. There were posters made.
Yeah, they're costing the government so much money, aren't they? That's why we're skint. They were getting the blame for why they were skint.
That's it. So they were getting the blame. And it's almost like this thing as well that's happening, saying that the unvaccinated, telling lies, the unvaccinated, they're taking up the beds. The unvaccinated are the ones that are spreading this. It's based on propaganda. It is lies. There's no 2 ways about it. So I'm not saying the atrocities match, but the methods used to create this division are the same.
That's what I mean. Like not everyone has the time to look into stuff and things like. They just maybe put BBC on for the night and they'll just hear some of these news clips. It's the unvaccinated keeping this pandemic going. And they'll be like, the bloody unvaccinated like that, aren't they? Instead of looking at the facts, the reality is most unvaccinated are young people that if they get COVID, it's a cold for the majority. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the TV will have you thinking it's unvaccinated clogging up the hospital beds. Hospital isn't clogged, I think.
And then if there's one 25, 30-year-old, the cameras are all around that person's bed.
They're normally obese as well, aren't they? They're normally
job, you know.
Massive fat guy or something like that. I was perfectly healthy, and like all the comments underneath and stuff.
The other day.
It's just, it's like if I can remember when I got COVID and I freaked out a little bit. They start for fucking hell. If I die, they'll make a right scene of it. They were like, oh, he was saying about this, and an because you always say anti-vaxxer. Like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer or anything. I'm just a common
If
senser.
you want it, go get it. Fine.
Yeah.
In fact, I would actually, if do you know what? See if you're on, like you say, someone with health issues, obese problems, and someone say to me, I'm not putting that shit in me. I'll say, mate, speak to your doctor.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say to them. I won't tell them to take a vaccine either, but I'll say, listen, speak to your doctor. You know, I've got a friend who's got some health problems in that sense, and I'm like, I will not hesitate to tell him, you know, are we getting his booster and everything? Fine, you know. I'm never ever going to talk anyone out of not taking a vaccine. It's like anti-vax. What does anti mean? Well, if you're anti-racism, you think the world would be a better place if there was no racism. Anti-vax is not someone that thinks that, and don't get me wrong, there are people out there that think it's some kind of depopulation thing. I don't think that at all. What I do believe, based on my own experiences, is that there are any adverse reactions are being played down.
Yeah.
And in the interest of money, it's been pushed towards people that don't really need it. And it's effectively, you know, if you're talking about a vaccine subscription service, it's literally what it's turning into. I mean, there was the thing, who was saying it today, next 4 or 5 years, Pfizer, someone from Pfizer was saying, you know, we're probably going to need boosters for the next 4 or 5 years. Now, there's an interesting thing that's going on at the moment with this. I don't know if you've been paying attention to it. I have, but it's almost as if the vaccine companies are all starting to pitch against each other.
I've seen Pfizer have been like promoting AstraZeneca bad stories, weren't there? It's like, oh, there's blood clots with AstraZeneca. We're as safe as ours is. I think I've seen that on Twitter. They've been caught pushing that agenda, haven't they, that AstraZeneca wasn't safe. And
then what's it, you know, we've got much less cases in Europe. I'm not a scientist, but you got to ask the question, why is that? Is it because we've got more natural immunity?
Yeah.
Is it because we're further ahead with the boosters? Or is it because they used AstraZeneca as opposed to what the other countries were using? Who knows? But why aren't they having those debates?
That's a bit, I like, why not ask that question? I hate it. I don't watch them things anymore. At the start, you'd have Boris there and you'd have 10 people asking, we should lock down early. And it's never the questions you want asked, do you? Like, it's the same with Jeremy Vine in the morning. I've clicked on that, made that mistake a couple of times, and he'll have 5 people ringing in. You think there should be more restrictions, Maureen? Yeah, because I want to stay alive. And it's always them type of people. I'd love someone just to ring up once saying, you're all mental, get on with your life. If you want the vaccine, get it. If you don't, just get on with it. It's your choice. It's like, if loads of people die of heart disease, I think it's like 400, 500 a week. It's like me saying I should have the right to knock Greggs out of people's hands. Oh, you don't need that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're in charge of your health, aren't you, really? And if you don't want to go to the gym and that, it's on you. If you want to drink every night of the week, it's on you. But taking advice of someone selling you something like Pfizer, it's like a car salesman. Car salesman said it's the best car in Europe. Why would he lie? Because he's making money out of it. And it's the same with pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that.
That's a really good analogy. I'm going to use that one. That's a cracker. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, there's a lot of money involved. We can't ignore that. There's got to be a debate around it, and that's what it should be. It's not happening.
And before we go, that party that Boris had last year, I love these people who did like, they were having parties last year, and you're like, none of them followed. No one followed that. They'll just be doing them press conferences into wherever they want to go. And Dominic Raab made us laugh. He said something like, oh, we don't investigate things retrospectively, sort of thing. Basically, it was a year ago. Let's just let it go. And he thought, how many bank robbers and stuff like that? I thought, tell you what, I thought they did do that, because every crime's in the past, isn't it? Yeah. Unless you solve them before they happen, like the Minority Report, Tom Cruise.
You could say that about anything.
But people are just shocked, aren't they? Like, they're just appalled. Like, I can't believe they had a party. Like, yeah, I can. You know what I mean? And it doesn't bother me one bit. I'm one of them. Just, if they wanted to have a party, it's on them, isn't it? But I think Boris,
you know, there was one, I think it was a Labour MP, and she was she stood up and said, you know, I feel really unsafe because all these Tories are in the House of Commons with her. And she was at the Mobiles the other night taking selfies, no masks, and
Stormzy.
Nicola Sturgeon was the same. We had COP26, big environmental conference. We had 30,000 delegates come to this city, and we've just been told we've all got to work at home. And this was like a couple of weeks ago. 30,000 delegates from all over the world now are saying, oh, it's a bit dangerous. You all got to work at home. Piss off, you know?
Well, I think that's a good thing. Like you say, I think everyone's getting to that point now, or a bit like, nah, do as we say, but not as we do. And I think you do that enough. I think we'll be lucky in the UK because they haven't brought in the mandatory stuff. Like the other countries have done it a bit earlier in their thing. I think if they'd done it at the start of the pandemic, there'd have probably been me and some other lunatic in yourself would have been like, we should do this. Whereas now, most people you talk to now thinking, like, it's like people who got the vaccines. Most people I talked to didn't get it for safety. It's like, I want to get a Benidorm. Got my vaccine, so I'll go 10 weeks. I'd never heard anyone mention saying I'm getting the vaccines because I don't want to die. No one under a certain age. It was just, it'll just affect my life if I don't. But a lot of people have had the first 2. Next year, you're going to have 4, according to, I seen some the other day. And it's gone up, obviously, it's gone up 2 in a year. Imagine in 5 years, it might be weekly, might be daily.
Listen, I think I'm going to find it harder and harder to get more and more people to agree to that.
Yeah. You know? Because they keep saying about the numbers, don't they? Like, oh yeah, 99.9%. But I talk to a lot of people that haven't had it, and you always think they must. I must be just talking to the ones in that 1% or 10% or whatever. But I don't know. I think it could be. Yeah.
It's almost as if I think that, you know, when we go to war, there was always a thing like we're at war with the Germans. We must stop any pro-German stuff, or we must report this for the sake of national feeling. We must look like we're willing in this, that we're winning this war. We must always look like we're winning it. Keep the propaganda going so people don't get disheartened. You know, Britain's winning the war, Britain's going on. The thing is a similar thing that's going on here. You know, we've always got to give the impression that we're winning this war because we're all doing our bit. We're all taking our jabs, no matter what the numbers are. I think that's probably what's going on.
People made that analogy on Facebook and LinkedIn at the start, weren't they, saying this is our Second World War. There's people still alive from that Second World War. I bet none of them who stormed that beach at Normandy was sat on the sofa watching Netflix thinking, I tell you what, this reminds me of that Second World War. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a fucking stupid analogy for people like, oh, this is our war. And you're like, come on, you know, it's same with on social media with the takeaways, that virtue signal. Like, I've just ordered a local takeaway from my local because I care about the economy and business. You're like, well, are you up and thanked for this? You know what I mean? Like, oh, forget about the aid workers in Africa. This guy's just bought a kebab. Do you know what I mean? It felt such a weird dynamic, wasn't it? It was always like, oh, I want thanked for being a good person. I thought we're through like that looking glass of mental, wasn't it? In the pan. It's not as bad now, but some bit of it, I used to look at my phone. I'd never been on social media as much, and I used to feel like just throwing it in the river, didn't you? Feel, I just can't look at this.
Oh yeah. I keep mine off most of the day, you know. Now, see what's going on. Look at kind of favoured sites for a bit of thing, post about it, and then keep the phone off, you know.
Yeah. But like I said,
a couple of times a day and just slay a couple of people that are talking absolute nonsense, and that's it.
Well, same with LinkedIn. Some of the messages meant, lad, I had an Asian guy that said, I'll promote your podcast, spelt podcast wrong. And then he said, I had pretty eyes. And I thought, oh, that's nice, isn't it? I just thought, you know what I mean? I just thought, what a weird setup it is on LinkedIn, because you've got like international sportsmen and just nutters. It's such a melting pot of people, but no, it's all right. But cheers for coming on, Michael, anyways. And,
pleasure.
Hopefully, next time I'm in Glasgow, I'll be coming in. I'm up in Glasgow quite a bit, so I'll make sure I come in. I'm a bit loud when I'm drunk, so just throw us out.
You'll enjoy that. You'll fit in well.